Hi everyone, I'm delighted to be here with Rodney and Mirko. As you know, refugee population is linguistically diverse. These interactions are time consuming and this confusion breeds fear, panic and vulnerability. So we're going to start with Rodney, who's going to present TikTok, and then Mirko, Translators Without Borders, before going on with the panel. Thank you very much.
Hello, I hope you're having a great time. In 2015, when I was still working at a branding agency in Oslo, the media was presenting us with images like this, and it hurt. I realized that many refugees don't speak European languages, and I can only imagine how stressful it can be when approached by a policeman or any other official in a foreign language and you don't speak their language. But what could we do? We're tech people and we build software. So my friends and I, we came up with an idea, and it's simple. It's to connect refugees with interpreters. But I had a safe job and I was expecting my second child. It's tough leaving behind the 9-to-5 job with benefits. But it can be even tougher letting go of a good idea. And it's not right that there are 22 million refugees. It's not right that we still don't understand each other. And I was not alone. My co-founders, Gotham and Jörn, felt the same way. Our friends at the Startup Lab Incubator in Oslo felt the same way. And all of us knew something needed to be done. So we decided to quit our jobs and start a company that would provide a direct link between refugees and interpreters. We got backing from Innovation Norway, and we started our journey in February 2016. We quickly learned that unqualified interpreters are heavily in use all over Europe, and that there are only a handful of certified interpreters all over Europe. While the need also for their skill is immense. We knew that technology could scale up their capacity by providing them video services. We also learned that agencies act as gatekeepers, charging high prices to their clients and giving peanuts to the interpreters. Inspired by marketplaces such as Airbnb and Uber, we built a product in just 2 months. And how do you think that went? We failed miserably. Why? Because refugees don't have credit cards, nor do governments. We also only provided video, which is a problem in areas where there's bad internet. We were losing our direction and we're not feeling in control. But that's when we heard of Techfugees. We met Mohammed, a Syrian refugee from Norway, who joined our team, and we got back the one thing which we were missing, hope. During Techfugees, we built an on-demand feature to connect refugees with interpreters with just a click, and we were one of the finalists. That convinced us that we should not give up just yet. We knew that our technology was going to help people, and we wanted to help as many people as fast as possible. And that's when we decided to work with the government and organizations. So we started interviewing government officials, doctors, nurses, built our product further in partnership with the police, asylum centers, and others. We also got into the Oslo Smart City Accelerator, where we learned how to apply for government tenders. And that was a learning point and a turning point. So we made our product more government-friendly and tailored it so that you would get the right interpreter for the right situation. We also started applying for government tenders, winning some too, and getting 100% quality ratings. Today, we're a strong team of designers, engineers, sales and business developers providing interpretation services throughout Norway. And we have automated our product so that you would get the right interpreter. And we have helped more than 1,000 customers get access to them. My aim is to enable organizations and people with a digital tool that will give them access to certified interpreters. And if you want to, please talk to me, and maybe we can join up. Thank you very much.
Kind of a different angle, of course, similar challenge, the language challenge in the refugee situation. So I work for an NGO, Translators Without Borders, which was actually founded here in Paris. Next year it'll be 25 years ago, so we're somewhat venerable, I guess. We're now officially a US nonprofit. and we merged this year with another translation non-profit, well known in the translation world, the Rosetta Foundation, which brought in another 10,000 or so or more volunteers. So we have a base of 20,000 volunteer translators, and we've translated so far 50 million words. In the translation business, words is a typical unit. Interpretation, for instance, is already very different there. We work mainly with volunteers. We're actually a small NGO. We work mainly with NGOs, so not typically directly with affected populations. And we have activities in crisis, in development, so say capacity building for training translators, and advocacy, language issues, make people, organizations, governments aware of language issues. So more specifically in the context of refugees, we've been very active in the European refugee response over the last couple of years. We created a rapid translation service in Greece for the languages spoken by refugees. So that was Arabic, or still is to a large extent, Arabic, Pashto, Farsi, Dari. You probably, some of these languages, you may not have heard of them, Kumanji, Sorani, and others. We actually had, we had a stable team in place. That program unfortunately ended with the funding by the European Commission earlier this year. But we worked in conjunction, or we delivered interpretation services in this context to organizations like UNHCR, Internews, and others listed on the slide. So we recruited and recruit in these crisis situations, coordinate and train interpreters as well as translators.
Maybe just if you tell us the difference between both, just...
Yeah, so interpreting is actually basically what we're getting here through this device as well. So I could actually listen to someone translating to myself what I'm just saying myself. I don't know if that creates some feedback, like on when that happens with your microphone. I don't know what happens then. Maybe my brain explodes. So interpreting is spoken translation in the act of a communication. Whereas translation, even spoken translation, it can exist as well, and actually is sometimes necessary when people can't read and write, implies a difference. There's a time gap at least where a translator, can think properly about how they're going to render something. They can often modify as well. It's more of a process, whereas the idea of interpretation is instantaneous and verbal or spoken. It's a very important distinction. There are different job profiles as well, different skills, different trainings, but the needs often converge, and there's a lot of confusion around that in the humanitarian world as well. And it's sometimes not as easy to separate these needs as it would maybe be for those who provide these services to separate them. And it's a permanent struggle for us actually as an organization to decide how far we go in offering interpreting services versus the translation services that we traditionally provided. On the tech side, very quickly, what we do, some of the things we do, as we have been doing a lot of volume translations for humanitarian organizations, productivity tools are very important for us. We use standard, typical translation technology today, state of the art, be that what's called translation memories or machine translation, so MT or OCR to scan, say, handwritten documents or so. We combine these technologies also to help our translators to work faster. We also developed some machine translation ourselves. For Sorani was the world's first machine translation. Sorani is one of the Kurdish languages, by the way, for which there was no technology. We developed glossary apps to support interpreters in refugee camps for offline use without access to the internet. We also maintain a library of spoken translations. That's, for instance, right now very important in the Rohingya refugee crisis where we're active, because that's a language that is hardly written. So translations in written format are not of a lot of use. And then we also created, and that's something where we've had some exchange in the past as well, and there's some synergy maybe. We created a job board for humanitarian interpreters that we just launched a month ago. Thank you.
Okay, so my first question is going to be super basic. Why not use Google Translate?
We use machine translation and Google Translate, among other solutions, as a productivity tool. One issue, although machine translation, not only admittedly, amazingly gets better and better, and there have been huge leaps forward even just this year or the last couple of years with neuro machine translation, so deep learning and so on, bringing in really new approaches. But there still is a question of, is something right actually? And there was in social media just recently, yesterday, there was this anecdote, whether it's true or not, about a Palestinian being arrested because he said, I think, good morning, and it was translated as something threatening. This can happen with machine translation. It's not completely impossible with human translation either, but it's much less, the risk is much less real, let's say. So there is just this aspect, how much can you trust a technology even if it's likely to be fairly good? There still is a risk that you need to manage somehow. The other aspect is simply the availability of the technology for the languages that are central in the refugee context or in other crisis situations. Machine translation or language technology is initially, today, the reality is mainly developed for English first, and then slowly spreads, or maybe somewhat more quickly now, spreads to other big important markets. They don't start with Rohingya, because there is no business justification for it. So the languages that matter most in the refugee crisis, most of them, with the exception of Arabic in particular, there is just no machine translation, there is no speech generation, there is no speech recognition. All this language technology stack that we're now used to today just doesn't exist for those populations.
And so if I'm an organization, how does it work? How is it professional translation? How much time is it going to take? Like, can you tell me more, like both of your solutions? How does it work?
So for us, if you're an organization, you basically create an account on TikTok. You post out your need, you publish it. The language combinations, what exactly is, if it's health or if it's a court matter or whatever. And then the interpreters apply to the assignment, and they give the different prices, and then you choose the one which you prefer. As in, it could be then based on their quality. So it could be, in Norway, we have 5 official different levels, and then we have like bilinguals. So you can go, oh, this guy is a level 1, I'll take that guy. But then perhaps you haven't got deep pockets, so you're happy with a level 3.
Marco, what about you?
Yeah, so we have quite a variety of services, if you will, that we provide. And traditionally, it's been translation. So we have a big, translation platform where partner organizations can upload the documents to be translated, and we provide, we match it up with volunteers, and the volunteers will schedule when to return this. Typically that's a bit like in a professional translation context. The translations are done by professional translators as well, who will agree on a certain deadline and say, we'll deliver this in 2 weeks, because then that's when I find time to work on this. In the context of the refugee crisis, this is not the right approach. So there we created sometimes somewhat improvised workflows involving Skype and Google Docs and so on, where people would directly access documents in order to create some instantaneous or more immediate response, so that documents or translation requests could be handled within say a couple of hours, or maybe not more than a day, depending on what it was. So that's for translation. And for interpretation, so we put in place now this interpreter job board. So we don't handle assignments as you do, but we actually try to simply match up organizations who are looking to hire an interpreter, so for longer stays. So there is less this idea of immediate access to someone, but more, at least we tell them whether to find an interpreter or interpreters where their services are needed.
Okay, so you support rather the organizations than the refugees by working with them.
That's right, exactly. That's for us as an NGO. It's really how we deliver on our mission is through other NGOs. We consider ourselves as enabler, not as the ones who actually provide the vital information, but we help give the access to that vital information to refugees, for instance.
And pretty much us also, that we also feel like that we're the enabler, giving the hospitals, giving the police, giving the courts, giving the NGOs the tools and the access to certified interpreters.
We're doing loads of things with Translators Without Borders, with TikTok. So what's next?
So for us, next is to basically talk to all of you. Hopefully we can partner up And seeing that we've really tested now our technology in Norway, which is in one way quite a safe country. It's a small country, it's not so much volume, but enough to really test the platform. And for us is to see what other country we can go into now and help out. Yeah.
So it's not have more interpreters on the platform?
Obviously that also. I mean, with every country you need to then obviously get more interpreters in that language. If we would go into France, we'd know French to Sudani or French to Arabic and so on.
Have you thought of the next country or not yet?
We are eyeing up some, but yeah, it depends a bit also on funding. So if there's investors here, we would love to talk to you.
Well done.
Yeah.
What about you, Marco? What's next?
I'll be focusing, as head of technology on the technical aspect, although that's not necessarily at the core of what we do. And that sometimes it's important to understand, even for the people who are not technical. It's often, sometimes there's an expectation, just create some tool and then it'll be sorted, And as most of people in the tech world know, the tool is one bit. Actually, say a service, being able to sell it, for instance, which applies less to us, but being able to sell it, to sustain it, to maintain it, and so on. Finding users, helping them, understanding their needs, and adapting the product is key to the success of any tool as well. So in terms of technology, what we care about a lot, what I care about a lot, is language technology, as I alluded to earlier. We want to help create language technology for these underserved languages. That's kind of the technical term that is used for these languages. Get them access to the type of technology that is missing today. And the key to that is to gather data. Today's technology is, of course, generally data-driven. And the lack of data is really what holds many of these languages back. So we're working together with anyone today to encourage them to collect data and to share the data and make it accessible. So we're working, for instance, with Microsoft or Google and Facebook and companies like that to kind of create that dynamic, but also, of course, the partners, the NGOs who we're working with.
And those GAFAs are willing to share their data with you, or?
It's tricky. It's a tricky negotiation. I mean, there are sometimes conflicting business interests as well, conflicting or converging. You can, or sometimes both. Some of the markets, some of the languages that we care about, like Hausa, for instance, is becoming an interesting market in terms of, for some of the companies that are just named. So there is a convergence of business interest and humanitarian interest, but at the same time, that can create a business conflict, where people say, I don't want to work on this with one of my potential competitors. So it's somewhat of a negotiation. It's not just oh yeah, let's do it. It's not as easy as that. And we hope to position ourselves as kind of a neutral facilitator in this context of tech companies, academia as well, and the humanitarian organizations.
And this is at a global scale. You're present.
That's at a global scale, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're based in Switzerland, and then
I'm personally based. We're a virtual organization. We don't have a real office. We somewhat inherited now an office in Dublin, but we're very virtual. Yeah. Yeah, it's my grandmother. No.
Okay.
No. Yeah.
Do you want to explain?
No, it's through the merger with an Irish. So the Rosetta Foundation, who we merged with, a very volunteer-driven organization, who we had the opportunity and chance to merge with earlier this year. They happen to have an office which we continue to maintain.
I have one maybe last question for you, Rodney, about the relationship between TikTok and Techfugees. Mm-hmm. How does it work? You were saying you kind of failed first time and then went to the hackathon, and what changed at the hackathon, and how did it all work out?
Yeah, I think just having like in any hackathon, you get like a group of people into a room, and you get so many ideas, and then I think also having that combination between actually having a refugee with us and actually explaining the problems, the everyday problems which he has, like just translating a document, or like how do I get to the doctors, or simple things, that just made us like think, And we really saw the need for our product, so then we just got that motivation back.
Now you're
Yeah.
back today.
We're back
Great.
today,
And
yeah.
so maybe one last question for both of you. What can be done at a larger scale? What should be done? What would be your advice, piece of advice for people, using tech to help refugees? What can be done?
So my background is, maybe that's a bit late, but my background is not the humanitarian world. I've been working in this context now for a bit over a year. And what I found coming from the industry we really lack is some, good business practice around defining business cases, understanding needs, and also some of today's development practices, like agile development practice and so on. I think we can benefit a lot in the humanitarian world from the tech experience with building quick solutions that are immediately tested against real needs and adapted to it. There is still a certain culture of, there is this big solution that we need, and we'll work towards that, and then 2 years later we'll show you what we've done. And in the meantime everything has changed, of course, even if the solution was initially well defined. So I think there's a lot of knowledge, of know-how in the tech world, also in the startup world in particular, that the humanitarian world can benefit from.
Well, the proof of concept, for example, with refugees could be dangerous too.
Could be dangerous?
Yeah? Testing things, with refugees that are already vulnerable, for example, or?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there are situations, of course, that where we have to be careful, like medical, say, machine translation in a medical context or so. No, you wouldn't just test it. But again, those are challenges I think that some people in the tech world at least are also familiar with, because in medtech or in finance or so, you can't just try things, but you have to do it in a very controlled way. But I think in general, in the coming more now from the organizational, humanitarian organization or aid organization context, there's a lot we can learn from how the tech world has become so incredibly influential over how society works today, to have more impact.
For us, it's I would say that what you said, the agileness, and I think that NGOs, organizations, governments, they should open up more towards startups and let them in, so that we can actually test our technology and prove our point. Because we've basically had one door after the next closed, and we had to break through that. It's like breaking language barriers, but breaking through through organizations. So just be open and transparent. That's our mission.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. A huge round of applause for Rodney and Marco. Thank you.